Tommy, good morning, sir, and welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Jesse. How's it going?
All is well. Thank you for coming on.
No problem, no problem. Sorry about the technical difficulties on my end.
Yeah. Um, I was we were supposed to have you at the top of the hour, but you were late, and I was telling I was telling the people that every time we have black guests, they be late.
I really have to say that is a bad thing. Last night I did I did 7 hours of a show, and it lasted until maybe about 3 hours ago, and apparently I was late, and then the system is just crashed for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Nothing is up, so this is my CT. I'm on CT time, color people's time.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
It is. It is sad that it's universal that we're going to be late for something. That is really sad.
Yeah.
That a lot of what we're known for, to be perfectly honest, is probably not good stuff.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about you and your background, so I have some questions I'd like to ask before we get into the rest of the discussion here. Were you raised by your father and mother?
No, sir. I was just raised by my mom. So that is probably one of the things that have hurt me the most, and it's why I came up with the idea of A Fatherless America, the movie that I'm working on.
And when you say hurt, did you know your father growing up? Did you have any contact with him at all?
I had very little contact with him. I knew of him. I think in my whole life I may have seen him a total of probably about 6 times.
Wow. And were your mother married to him at any point?
No, sir.
Oh, I see. And so what was it like for you growing up without your father being there? What was that like for you?
Well, the funny part about it was because everyone in my neighborhood typically did not have their father,
Yeah.
it was a normality to not have your father. So it wasn't something that I felt was wrong or weird. As a matter of fact, it felt wrong or weird to see people with their fathers. And I remember we used to make fun of people who had their fathers. My cousin, the most prominent story, he was the only one of us who had his father, and we made fun of him so much that by the time he was 20, he was dead, trying to prove to us he was just as hard and reckless as we were. And he died when we were 20.
So as a kid, did you long for your father? Did you want him there?
Sad part about it is I didn't until I got around other people who had fathers. By the time my mom was able to move to middle class, then I went from attending a predominantly black school to a predominantly white one. And at the predominantly white one, when we would go to when I played my basketball, football, baseball, track, and all that, they had their fathers there. So after a while, I started to figure, well, wait a minute, something's wrong because they all have fathers. And I looked and I noticed it seemed like the homes were more stable. The women weren't as loud. The women weren't in control. The men, because there were men there, the home seemed, it's hard to explain. It just seemed like there was more love in the home because the mothers were able to do more things with their extra income and the stability that the father brought to the home.
Did you love your father while growing up?
I loved the idea of him, and then I met him and realized that it was just an idea. So I realized I didn't love a father. I loved the idea of a father.
When you say you met him and realized it was an idea, explain that.
See, I had an idea. You know, it's kind of like you think your father's probably this guy that if he got to know you or you were around, he would be excited, and if he was there, all of your problems would be gone. That was what was starting to go through my mind when I saw the other kids with fathers. I said, well, if my father was here, I wouldn't have to deal with any of this stuff either. He would take care of me and do X, Y, Z. So I fell in love with the idea of a father. It's hard to love someone that you didn't know, and I didn't know him. So all I had was the idea of him, and the idea of him was not the same as the actuality of him. In actuality, my father, by the time he died, was an alcoholic. He died of cancer. And he basically died alone.
So when you met your father, and what you mean by the idea is that when you met him, he was a letdown to you. He wasn't
Yeah, I had
what
built
you
up.
expected.
Yep, I had built up this falsehood guy.
Yeah.
This guy from, the Waltons, Leave It to Beaver. I made this guy. I never saw him, but I made him. I said, this has to be what my father's like. Because, I'm such a great kid. This guy has to be such a great guy. And the only reason he's not here is because of circumstances beyond his control. That's how I saw it.
How old were you when you were doing this makeup thing?
I probably think from the time that I can remember, because I remember seeing him one or two times when I was little. So I would see him for a while. He would come with a little McDonald's or something like that. And as a kid, you're the greatest person in the world. That's the unfair part about parenting in different households. He was the greatest thing in the world because, he'd show up with McDonald's or something. Guy was great.
So when you discovered that he was a letdown, what age was that?
I was 16.
16.
At 16 is when I realized he is not that guy.
And did you tell him?
I didn't tell him because I didn't have the what's the word? I didn't have the strength to tell him. I didn't have the ability to tell him. Out of the idea of respect, I said, well, it's not my place. This is how I viewed it. It's not my place to say this because even though he's a disappointment, how do I say to him, you're a disappointment? The sad part is this how I viewed it. How do I say this to him? Not my place.
But maybe had you said it to him, he could have explained to you what happened in his life, and that way you would have understood it, and that would have brought you guys closer.
One of the greatest things I regret is that I never gave him an opportunity to even explain his side of it, and let me tell you why.
Why is that?
He reached out to me 3 months before he died, and I refused to take the phone call.
Wow.
And it's been one of my greatest regrets. My grandmother was like, your father's dying. I was like, yeah, whatever. I literally said that. I was like, whatever.
And what made...
I'm not going to let him clear his conscience. I was like, I'm not going to let him clear his conscience by telling me he's sorry so he can try to get himself into heaven. That was how bitter I was by 28.
That's amazing, man. What did your mother have to say about him?
Well, it was nothing really good that she said about him. That was kind of a part of the way it was. I mean, in the black community, talking bad about your father has never started a schoolyard fight. You've never started a schoolyard fight because someone said, your daddy ain't,
Right.
he ain't this or he ain't that. You would be like, wait a minute, you know my dad? Like it's not a fighting word. But so when she would say certain things, it just became normal for me to believe he wasn't a good guy. I never knew from his vantage point what happened, what was going on, what was wrong.
That's amazing, man, that your anger got in the way where you had the opportunity but wasn't able to take advantage of the opportunity due to the anger.
Remember, in the black community, it's okay to hate your dad.
I know.
It's just not okay to hate your mom.
Yeah.
Your mom Tupac has a song in one of his, a lyric in one of his songs, and it's so poignant to what we do in the black community or how we view mothers. He says, even though you was a crack scene mama, you always was a black queen mama. Now think about that.
Yeah.
That no matter what mistake this woman can make, she is this.
I write about Tupac and his mother and father in my new book, The Antidote, Healing America from the Poison of Hate, Blame, and Victimhood. And while doing the research on them, it was sad what I found out. But yet I understood it. It's so typical in the black community. It's a very, very interesting story. So let me ask, are you a Christian?
That's a hard one. No, it isn't. I'm not. I grew up Christian. Well, grew up Catholic. Then we went into basically became Christian Baptist. And my mom was trying to find out who she was. So in the process as a kid, I was drug through that. Knew a lot about the Bible. Was so-called saved by the time I got to college. Knew the Lord. And then today, I would have to say I'm more of I guess, an agnostic or borderline atheist. Like, I believe in a God, but I'm still iffy on the Christian God because I want to know more.
And you're on the borderline of being an atheist, becoming an atheist, but you want to believe in God, but not the Christian God. Am I right?
Well, I believe in a God, but I don't know, because the Christian God is the only one I've really known and studied. And so that was what I was. And I believed in it 100%. Even last night, I think I spent most of my time on my show preaching, because we were talking about, my show topic last night was violence. Why is it that the violence in the black community is the one thing that the black leaders won't talk about? That's what we're not discussing. We'll discuss a cop. And I basically went on a rant and started preaching from the Bible, because that's where my background is.
So you're just doing it out of, you're doing it out of habit and not necessarily what you believe?
Right, and that's what scares me. I don't want to be that guy that does something out of habit and not what I believe. So I won't go around and say, like a few of your past guests, they say they're Christians, but their actions aren't. I want my actions to back up what I'm saying, and I think God will respect me more for not being a bad representation of Him.
So it's safe to say that you are not a Christian. You're more a borderline atheist.
Yeah, I would guess so. I mean, a lot of the things that I know are of Christianity, but the things that I do wouldn't follow it, so I'm not going to call it.
What is it that you dislike about Christianity?
A lot of the people who call themselves, and I know it's not fair to judge the religion on the people, and I'm always told not to do this, but a lot of the people, they aren't doers of what they're asking other people to do. The hypocrisy of it, when they're saying one thing and they're holding you accountable. I have a saying, I said, a lot of people use the Bible as a shield for themselves and a sword against you.
What is it that they're, give us an example of something that they're asking you to do but not doing themselves?
Like, a Christian will say a sin is a sin. All sin are the same. But then they'll point out the differences between your sin, which you need to get your life right, and their sin, which is everybody sins and comes short of the glory of God. And I've always found that was odd when they're not as hard on when they get caught sinning as when they catch you sinning.
Yeah.
I just did. I thought my whole point was they should be as critical of an eye on themselves, or more, because you know your own sins more than you know someone else's.
Was your mother a good Christian? Example of a Christian?
Good question, honest answer. At the beginning, no, because everything was hypocrisy. But because she was a woman, she could get away with it.
And so do you think that influenced you in the way that you perceive other Christians now?
Oh, but of course. I mean, that influenced me. And then growing up and seeing other Christians, especially when I got deep in the faith by the time I got to college, I started noticing that the people were religious based upon what either they couldn't get or what they were trying to get. I remember a guy who was my barber, and he was one of the guys that was, we read Bible all the time. We would go around and talk to other students, and then he got accepted to the Kappas. Once he became a Kappa, all of that religion went out of the door because he was a part of the most popular frat on campus. So the next thing I know, he was partying, clubbing, drinking. It was weird.
Because of time, I want to move a little faster. So you've been married before?
Not technically. Well, technically, yes, I was married. I helped a woman get into the country. Don't say anything about me. Don't judge.
Oh, you are. And so you pretended to be married to her?
No, I actually was really in love with the woman. I didn't know that's what I was doing until it was over.
And why did you guys break up?
Because it was over.
I mean, you loved her once you got with her.
I was a kid.
Oh, and she was faking love. She didn't love you.
Right. She told me, she said, well, if you really love me, you'll help me get, because I didn't even know what it was. She was like, I've been here legally, and if I graduate and I don't have my paperwork, it's not good.
Okay.
I was this guy that was just wide-eyed and in love with this chick. So I was like, sure. But technically, no, I have not been married.
So, and you don't have any children?
Yeah, I have a daughter.
And how's the relationship with you and your daughter?
Oh, my relationship with her is like amazing. I think because of her, my life changed. Before, her, I had no direction. And once she came, I literally believe that my life got on track.
Oh, good, man. Are you a good man?
I don't think so, because I don't know what I'm still trying to figure out what it is like to be a man, what it is to actually be a man. My confidence can be easily shaken. I think I act too emotional because I'm more like a female than a male when it comes to, you know, I will get an emotional response instead of a logical response a lot of times. I have been known to be a liar a lot to girls in relationship, to women in relationships. I have been late to radio shows when I'm supposed to be on time.
That's for sure. So let me ask. So you became like your mother.
I honestly did. I wake up. I have a saying, and I'm going to try to say it the clean way on the show. I say I used to wake up every morning. I had to get to a point where I had to wake up every morning, brush my teeth, wash my face, and stomp the female out of me. Like every day, I would have to be conscious of not being her.
Do you know how you became like your mother, or why?
That's because that was the influence in the household. And that's what's going on right now with a lot of men. The influence in the household is that woman, and the woman has the ability, no offense, to be more irresponsible than a man. A woman can yell in a man's face and nothing's happened. Matter of fact, if he does anything, everybody will say, hey, that's a woman. You can't touch that woman. But if a man gets in another man's face and yells and the guy beats him up, everybody will say, you shouldn't have been yelling at that guy. So if you see your mom yelling and getting away with it, as a guy, what do you grow up thinking that you're supposed to do whenever you're around things that you don't like?
But you took on, as most men do, black men, especially when the father's not there, you took on her identity. And so do you know how that happened?
Because that was what you saw. That was the norm. I had a transsexual on my radio show, and he said the saddest things, but pointing at the same time. He said, I became a strong transgender because I wanted to be like my mom.
Yeah.
You remember what, I don't know if you saw the interview with R. Kelly. R. Kelly was talking about basically being in love with his mom in a sexual way.
He said he wanted to marry her.
Yes, and these things are what a lot of black men, and I told people, I said, he needs to be able to say it. It's sad that he said it publicly, but people need to understand that a lot of these black men have that Oedipus complex towards their mom.
So you think it's just because they live in that environment, they become like their mother, right? Their mothers.
Yes.
Well,
she's the mom and a dad, and you're told that you must deify this person. So no matter what they do wrong, it's not wrong.
Well, the way you became like your mother, and most black men become like their mother, is because they resent their mothers. Whomever you are angry at, you become like who you hate. And most black men hate their mothers. And so when they hate their mothers, they take on her identity. That spirit that dwells in her now dwells in you. That's the only way it can get into you, by you hating it. That's why God said, don't hate, because you become like what you hate.
That's deep, kind of like Norman Bates.
And the way out is that you have to forgive her. You have to confront her, not to hurt her, but let her know you resent her for what she did to you and the way she treated you. And you realize that she can help herself, just like you can't help but act and think and be like a woman. Well, your mother can't help you. You know exactly how she feels. And if you can understand that's not the way you want to be, it will help you to understand that's not the way she wants to be. And when you forgive her, God will forgive you and take that spirit away from you. Then you can be yourself.
You know, the funny thing, my mom is actually a pastor. And,
oh, God, that's even worse.
She's been a pastor since I was about 13, 14.
Wow.
And she's been married to the same guy since I was 10. The thing is, she's still the same woman. So when we've had the discussion several times. Like we've gotten really close, probably over the last, I'd say 5.
You don't want to get close to her. You want to forgive her.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like a bit close enough to have the discussion, because typically when you're having the discussion with a black mom, you can have that discussion if you like, but it's not going to go very well because they're not going to admit that there's any fault in their part.
That's right. because
The sad
they're
part
very
about life
prideful.
is if you grow up to be a basketball player and making millions, it's all they're doing. If you grow up to be a killer and you kill 5 people, it's all the fact that you're damaged.
Tell me, because you came in so late, we're running out of time here, so I didn't get to half of the things I wanted to talk to you about. I'm going to have to reschedule you.
Yes, do it.
What's your website for the folks?
My website is Sotomayor TV. That's Sotomayor TV, as in television.com.
Did you, your last name, were you born with that name or is that a stage name?
That name was the name I got. I took it from my father when I got it back from my father. It's my father's last name.
Yes.
I hated my dad, and once my dad died, I realized that I was a victim of a lot of what you said,
Yeah.
how my dad was, and what he was born to. So I stopped hating the guy.
Good.
Let me start embracing what he could have been that he never became, and let me see if I can build a legacy and be what he never became.
Not knowing your father, I guarantee you that the reason he became an alcoholic, he had the same type of mother that you had, and he hated his mother. And once you have hatred, you're separated from God. Satan is your father, and you have no peace within. That's why you see you become like what you hate, and you see these guys marrying these different black girls or dating them, and every woman they get with is just like mama.
Just like mom, yep.
Because you're attracted to what you hate as well.
I lost probably one of the best women in my life simply because she was nice. And a lot of people won't understand this. Because she was nice, and that was odd. The whole idea of affection and holding hands and all of that stuff, I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
I was actually used to the drama part. So you're right.
So will you now forgive your mother so that God can take her identity from you?
Oh, I'd already done that. And I think that's a part of what I'm trying to do now, which I've never worded it the way that you did. But I think that that's a part of the goal that I'm trying to reach other people, to get them to even know that the feeling is there. So it comes across as bashing from my end
Right.
to other people. But I'm trying to get guys to realize, do you understand that this is not appropriate the way that we're acting? It's not appropriate how we're deifying someone and not even allowed to express to that same person where we believe they have hurt us.
Well, you can't stand up to, when you're angry, you can't stand up to the person that you're angry at unless you're angry. You have to become angry. Then you deal with the situation in the wrong way. Tommy, I'm going to have you back, man. We're out of time. Thanks for coming in late.
I was waiting on the Jesse Lee bashing, but I got it.
All right, man. I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, brother.
All right.